talk. Time to rock. Welcome to the channel, folks. Welcome to an extra special show. It's a new show on the channel, Brad. It's called the GNR Lies and Truth Show.
Yes. I like it. I like where you're heading with this.
You got it, bro.
I got my cup out for the whole, for the show. The whole.
Well, actually, you and Brad and John, sorry, you guys have done well. You dressed up. You got your old T-shirts out. Well done. I'm going to present you. I'm going to have to present. We'll present John first. There he is.
Where is he?
There he is. Well done, bro.
I went and found my old 1988-89 shirt that I would have probably bought at the gig, and in the day, as we used to do, rip the collar and the sleeves off. So I've managed to stretch it over my frame. So there you go. Actual vintage merch.
Vintage merch. Speaking of vintage merch, I see you've got something going on there too, bro.
This one here is the actual merch that I used to have, for my Guns N' Roses tribute, Appetite for Destruction. So you can see here it says Australia's Ultimate Guns N' Roses Tribute Show. And stay tuned. That's all I'll say. Stay tuned.
Well done. Well done, boys, for taking it seriously on our inaugural show here that we're going to have. We're going to probably do. You got them there. You got them. This is something that we're going to probably do a few times a year.
Dusted them off and dusted off the JCM slash heads.
My budget one.
Oh, yeah, there you go. No, I've got the both JCM slash heads out, dusted off, ready to go as well. So,
this guy, he's for real.
He's for real. And look, one of the reasons why we're doing this, John, we've spoken about Guns N' Roses a couple of times already on the channel. We've ranked the first album one of the greatest rock debut albums in the history of music already on the channel. And we were getting together, I think it was the Christmas show when we were talking. And, what happens, John, on the Christmas show, conversations go down all these different tangents and rabbit holes. And the topic of Guns N' Roses came up. And Brad said something that piqued my interest when you said, bro, that for a year, all you did was listen to Guns N' Roses and Slash.
Yep.
And I thought, wow, I don't know how many guitar players over the years, John, I've heard say that they've learnt to play the guitar by listening to that album. So I thought, let's get together. Let's do a show and talk about this band. I knew that too, that you were a Guns N' Roses fan too, John. So thanks for jumping on, brother.
Yeah.
Yeah, no worries, man. I've sort of like waned in my fandom over the years, but definitely you can't take away what that album did and their place in rock and roll history. So definitely, I'll be here for that.
100%. And we're going to be here next week too, but we'll talk about what we're going to do next week later on in the show, because there's a couple of things that we obviously have to do on the intro, the first part of the show. The first thing we have to do is thank everybody for watching live. I'll bring up the chat and have a look and see who's here. We want to thank people who are watching us after we've gone live. We appreciate you jumping on. We ask please to subscribe to our channel. I'm going to put up some social media links. We ask you please to go and support our friends. If you have a look on our channel, you'll see a community page with all our friends there. We invite you to take 30 seconds, a minute or whatever to go and subscribe to everybody that's on there. That's really, really important. And if you want to catch up with what Brad's doing, the Rock Professor's doing, John ZD351 Music's doing, because he's going to tell you a little bit about what he's been doing too later on. My gosh, we've got a bit of a full show. And our good brother, Zach Zedris. So go and join those guys down there, just under John.
And just
Zach, tell us what you've been doing.
And Zach Zedris will be joining us at some point, Andrew, with his we're going to do a bit of a show coming up, and his son might even jump on because it's about one of his favorite guitar players that recently departed. So we might announce that a bit later on, but I just thought for the people that are watching, that'll be really cool to have him
That
on.
will be a pleasure. and that will be a great show to have Zach and his boy on because his son, is just a great fan, loves all the music that we love, John. And isn't it great to see these young guys and girl getting hooked into the same music?
Yeah,
love it.
It's amazing. So yeah, that's something coming up. So yeah, we've got a few shout outs to do as well, Andrew, I believe. So we have the Rock Professor. We want to thank the Rock Professor. I'm not sure whether I'm meant to be doing it or not, Andrew. I've forgotten what we discussed in the green room. But yeah, we definitely missing you here, Rock Professor Simon, and we really hope and pray that your recovery is as speedy as it can be. We know that you're in quite amount of pain and you're suffering, so fingers crossed and prayers coming your way, my friend, for a speedy recovery. And we're looking forward to having you back on the show as soon as you're ready. There's no rush, but we've got capable hands down here below. John ZD3, that's ZD351 is taken over, mate. So he's as you know, he's more than capable. He's been here before. So thank you, Simon, for well, speedy recovery, mate. Speedy recovery.
Yeah. God bless Simon. Thank you, bro. Thank you for that. You got another shout out. One of our heroes. One of our heroes had a heavenly birthday, I understand.
He did. Mr. George Harrison, one of our, big dear influences here on the channel. I listened to a lot of George that day. I wish it was this week just passed. I had a lot of Beatles. I pretty much played. It was really cool. I put on all the Beatles songs with George Harrison, so I just played them back to back. I thought that was fitting. I thought that was a cool thing to do throughout the day, and obviously a few things, some of my favorites. But happy birthday, happy heavenly birthday to George Harrison. And after the show, I just want to say, go and have a listen to a George Harrison song called Cheer Down. It's very cool. And I think Eric Clapton's on guitar on that as well. But it's a marvelous track. Go and have a listen. Yeah.
Thank you for mentioning your playlist. If you've got that playlist and it's on Spotify, if you can share it with me afterwards, bro, I'd love to tap into it and save it myself. So please share it.
Yeah. And John, you've got a bit of a shout out to do yourself for a dear friend.
Now I've forgotten what I was supposed to do.
The nerd.
The nerd, definitely the nerd. Sorry. No, not so much of a shout out, but a little bit of a reminder. Our dear friend Caleb from the band Nerd Halen, which is probably one of the most original tribute bands out there doing the songs of Van Halen, but instead of dressing up like the band, they dress up like a bunch of nerds. So it's probably a Waldo tribute band, really, if you remember the character from Hot Teacher. But our dear friend, he and his family lost their house in the recent California fires. And so we're always touting the GoFundMe that's raising money for him to get back into the swing of things with all the things that you wouldn't even think of that you'd lose if you lost everything. So we're glad to hear that he's got a place for his family to live in. But of course, everything that went away needs to be replaced. Everything that he, just you forget how complicated life is and how many little things there are to take care of until it all goes away. So, if anyone's got the inclination to help and donate, please look at the GoFundMe and whatever you can spare, we'd really appreciate it for it.
Thank you, John. And we'll attach those links too in this chat and somewhere on the description of this video if you're watching on a replay.
Well done, John.
Be there for you to do that. So John, you and I, we did a show last week, didn't we? Was it last week?
I can't remember yesterday, mate. Even asked me from last week.
The week before. So yes, we did the Nebraska show. That's right.
Correct.
And Brad and I did a show last week, Jeepers. So I just want to do a shout out to you guys for that, because we like to acknowledge previous shows and we haven't done that the last couple of weeks. So I'm just having a look here, John. The show that you and I did is
Tank Channel, and Brad's on brought it back.
where are we? Nebraska. I can't. Oh, there's Nebraska. Just on 150 views. And Brad, Black Country Communion, we're on 125 views. So thank you very much, everyone, for supporting us and watching those great shows. It's always a barrel of laughs hanging out with you guys.
Yeah. Yep. And you got two monkeys for the price of one this week, Andrew. This bloke, me.
Look, the show's always good when it's got three guys on, and one of the great things about getting together with guys that share the passion for the same kind of music that you like. Every now and again, you do a show that's just got a little bit of extra special fondness for yourself, and this band certainly has for me. And I know from talking to Brad over the years, and it has an extra fondness for Brad and for you too, John, because you went and saw the band, when they were up there as one of the world's, the greatest band for about 18 months, 2 years. There was nothing bigger than Guns N' Roses. So, those memories are sort of hard to bury. And, the fact that we're celebrating that and talking about that for an hour and a bit on this channel in preparation for next week, Brad, is even better.
Well, yeah, it's unbelievable. I mean, all these years later, and you listen to Guns N' Roses in the early days, like Lies, Appetite for Destruction, even to somewhat Use Your Illusion. I mean, for me, they're epic albums. A lot of people have mixed feelings about the Use Your Illusion thing, saying there should have been just one release with less songs, blah, blah, blah. But I disagree. And I'm really grateful when you listen to Lies now, that they threw in the Live Like a Suicide EP as well from 1986, because it gives you a bit of a throwback to what they were before Appetite for Destruction, and then post Appetite for Destruction with the acoustic vibe. So it's just it's a wonderful, wonderful thing. I mean, to be able to sit back and listen to these records that were so influential to so many. I mean, us included. I mean, you mentioned before, Andrew, I locked myself away just listening to Slash for many, many, many years, really, like at least 1 year straight, just sat there learning Slash's playing, his licks, his songs, to the best of my ability anyway. So that's how I learned my chops, really. It's where it all stems from, really. I mean, listening to it this week, Andrew, listening to Lies, for example, this week, it was really like flashbacks. I had flashbacks of where I was at the time when I was listening to it, how it affected me when it came out. It was a magical time for music too. Let's be honest, there was so many great bands around. We had a wealth of great rock. We took it for granted at the time. I've said this many times, like in the 90s, late 80s and early 90s in particular, mid 90s as well, we all took for granted what was coming out, I think. You know what I mean? We had a resurgence of rock, even though there was alternative rock and grunge happening in the 90s and that as well. There was so much cool stuff happening all the way up to the year 2000s, I reckon. But Slash, Izzy, and then obviously when Izzy left, it sort of the dynamic changed a lot, but the band was still phenomenal, in my opinion. It was just, unbelievable.
Look, I agree with you, bro. And I'm just going to chuck it over to John, but I'm just going to back up one point that you made a couple of days ago. I was talking with a couple of work colleagues, and you have to remember around 89, 90, 91, 92, you had rock bands in the top 10, Nirvana, you had Guns N' Roses, you had The Cult. These bands, rock bands, were in were pop music, John. It was pop music.
Soundgarden, Alice in Chains, all of them. Yeah, Stone Temple Pilots with Vaseline, all sorts of stuff that was just, phenomenal. Sorry, John, I took over.
That's all right. I wasn't saying anything at the time, but I always thought sort of like that whole thing that sort of got kicked off with once Appetite for Destruction really took off, and it sort of replaced the scene at the time that was more glammed up, big hair, glitzy glamour type costumes, almost on the verge of sort of like being real not quite androgyny back like the early 70s type of sort of stuff, but definitely the look was a bunch of guys really glammed up in sort of ways that you wouldn't see out on the street. It was real stage attire. Even the people in those bands, if you saw them out and about, they wouldn't be wearing what they wore on stage. Whereas once Guns N' Roses, LA Guns, I'm trying to think of other bands like that, Little Caesar, all the bands of that time, and then of course, like what always happened back in the day, one band would make it a massive hit, and the record companies would scramble to find their version of the same sort of thing. So all of a sudden, it was bands that were wearing ripped jeans, black leather jackets, the sort of like almost a bikey look about them, and that carried on. And so I think that's sort of like, people say grunge sort of come and replace hair metal. This was sort of like the shift into that sort of, let's get away from a stage persona and try to get, a more sort of authentic look and vibe about a band, even though in some respects there were a lot of people that took on that look as a stage persona. So, but that's what I've always felt about, sort of like the very late 80s, early 90s sort of rock thing that sort of straddled, the gap between when Poison and Motley Crue and to an extent Kiss were wearing all that stuff as well. They were in their non-makeup years at that time, and then what then led on to the complete sort of abandonment of the hard rock type sort of look about them, and people were more just like in their flanny shirts and more of a grunge type look. So this sort of stuff, when it's authentic, it's fantastic, and I've no doubt that at the start Guns N' Roses were very much that authentic selves as they presented themselves. But yeah, definitely it turned the page into the next step of rock's history.
John, you mentioned stuff about like Guns N' Roses coming out and actually just having like that sort of less hair metal style of thing that was going around, like the Poison, the Bon Jovi thing. The wonderful thing that I found about Guns N' Roses when they were out, when Appetite came out, they just had like a real punk rock sort of attitude. They didn't really care too much. It was all about the music. It was in the face. It was raw. It was, you had everyone playing, super strat style guitars with pointy headstocks and that. And then Slash just came out with a Les Paul. It was like seeing, it's not a great comparison, but at the time, back in the late 80s, early 90s, to me, Slash was like Jimmy Page of the 90s for me. He had that edge. He had that on the rails, ready to come off at any time style playing. And I loved the Aerosmith-nishness about the band, because I loved Aerosmith as well. I loved how there was two guitars, easy Slash thing. They played different parts, even though they sort of, worked together so well. Duff and Steven Adler were so tight together, even though the substance abuse they were on and stuff like that. They just had a really cool attitude. And to top it off, you had Axl Rose, who had this phenomenal screechy style voice that was in your face, and it's so apparent on Lies. So like you really pick it up. The acoustic vibe with Guns N' Roses really gave Axl the opportunity to show his dynamics in his voice, especially the acoustic version of You're Crazy. I thought to myself when I was listening to that, by goodness, this guy was way ahead of his time when it came vocally. Like you put him on a stage with other vocalists and at that particular time, and I reckon he would have wiped the floor with them. not because of his ability, but his attitude. He just had something, you know, he had that Steven Tyler thing. He had that that edge, sort of edginess about him as a rock star. And he wrote they wrote fantastic songs. Let's be honest. Guns N' Roses wrote great songs. Everything had a bit of swagger to it, like the Stones guys. I don't know, Andrew, have you picked up on that? Especially the acoustic vibe. You can really hear a bit of Rolling Stones swagger there. There was something very unique about the band that separated them for me from all the bands around. You know, everyone at my high school, I was nicknamed Hippie because I loved, you know, Led Zeppelin, Black Sabbath, Jimi Hendrix, The Doors, and everyone loved Motley Crue, Poison, Bon Jovi, all that stuff. And then when Guns N' Roses came out, I kind of adopted them as my band because they were like, for me, an edgy 70s band in the 80s. It just kind of felt like that was, you know, where my sort of musical, you know, thing gravitated towards. And I love, John, how you mentioned that, you know, they didn't have that sort of thing where they needed. Initially, I think they did come out like that, though, John. They came out wearing lipstick and stuff, and they went, this is not us. And they ditched it real quick. Because if you have a look in the 86, 85, 86, there's pictures of them, you know, getting the band together and stuff like that.
I remember seeing pictures of Axl with his hair, like he just, you know, sort of bit an electrical cord, and it was just like straight out in every direction, you know, like it grew straight out of his head, wherever it was coming. But I don't think that. Well, you can see, you look up any photos of them, and you won't find that many of them in that get up, and pretty much they were just like a bunch of homeless people from the streets of LA right from the get go, which wasn't too far from the truth if you hear the history, but. Look, I think definitely at the start there was a real bit of authenticity that sort of like grabbed people after seeing the scene that was around at the time was just escalating into more exaggeration, more sort of like bigness on stage, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but everything runs its course. And we probably sort of like think to ourselves, well, this is how it's always been through our life. But it's, generationally things change. And then the new bunch of people come along and think, oh, that's theirs, what's ours? And so that's always going to be there's always going to be an evolution of that sort of a thing. And I think that was just the next step. I don't know how much, if there wasn't a Guns N' Roses, would someone else have been there instead to be the Guns N' Roses, or the people, the some band was going to do that, I guess, and there's always a little bit of luck involved in timing and whatever like that. But definitely, if you look at a lot of the bands that came out around that time and shortly after, they had that same vibe, same look, same sort of sound. A lot of them did it because of what they saw Guns N' Roses do.
Well said. Well said. Andrew, Guns N' Roses for you, mate. Like, we're going back to that era when Guns N' Roses first came out. What was your initial thought? Was it like a shell shock, or was it just like, oh, these guys are cool? Or, I mean, I know we've discussed it before, but for anyone who hasn't actually heard you talk about this, I thought it'd be a good opportunity for you to mention what they meant to you at the time. To think back to like 87, 88, 89, right? When Liars came out, Appetite was big. It was a wonderful time in music. But so what was it that sort of, did they smack you over the face, with their rawness, or was it something that just you gravitated towards over time? Or explain to us the
total package, bro. The total package when they came out, it was just the total package, the singles off the album before the album was released. And John, you said it, they looked the part, and that's really important. And rock and roll is about looking cool, I still post pics of Jimmy Page and say, this is super cool. It's just, Yeah, and these guys were pretty cool, on the in the sleeve of Appetite for Destruction, they're sitting there and they're all wearing sunglasses and they've got a keg behind them. It's just fantastic. And then on the back page there, on the back of the album, they're sitting there with their acoustic guitars and they've got bottles of Jim Beam, Brad. So when you're a young guy in 1987, 88, 89, when this stuff comes out, it's like, and you're sort of experiencing some of these things to a degree yourself. It's like, wow. So it's a cliche, isn't it, guys, where music becomes a soundtrack. And for a lot of us growing up, this band was the soundtrack. There were two big bands in my circle of friends. It was Guns N' Roses and U2 were the big bands, and then obviously after a while, with Guns N' Roses, Use Your Illusion especially, Guns N' Roses became just huge everywhere, John and Brad. Normies were listening to this band. It wasn't our band anymore, Brad.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
I got over that though. It's okay. You guys can listen to this band, but remember, it's ours first.
Always was, always will be.
Yeah. The thing too is to look at it was only a few years between the Appetite Lies era and the Illusion era. And by that stage, like I look at those two shows. You said you saw them in Eastern Creek. That was 93, wasn't it?
Yeah, around 93.
Yeah, it was 92, 93. So by that stage, they had Gilby Clarke had taken over for Izzy. Matt had taken over for Steve on drums. And you had Dizzy Reed on keyboards on stage, and you had three backup singers. One of them played the flute or something like that, from what I can remember. It was a much bigger production. Now, did you see them in 1988 when they came out?
I didn't see them, no. I wish to God I could have, but I think I was a bit young to actually get in, to be honest with you.
No, fair enough. Well, yeah, I went to see them in 88. It was December 88. And they were just like the five guys on stage, boom, came on stage, sang their songs, went away. And that was it. There was no big production. There was no sort of like extra stuff going on. And so like with that, there's like a real difference between those two eras in that short 5-year span. So definitely what is contained in Lies, and Lies really is two separate sets of 4 songs each that predate and post-date Appetite for Destruction. So in itself is an interesting makeup of that album.
100%. I'm slightly envious you got to see them back in the Appetite era. Both of you guys, Andrew, you saw them back then too, didn't you, in 88?
Yeah, saw them, and I think what John described is on the money. From 88 to 93, they were just a rock and roll band. 1 minute, and then there was this huge, awesome production. But we were lucky because in 88 the sound was really, really good. The 93 gig here in Auckland was notorious for having bad sound. The sound was bad, and over half the people got ripped off because of it. But look, at the end of the day, that's rock and roll. But we knew we were seeing something special, John, in 88. We knew it. It's hard to explain. There was nothing like it. And it was phenomenal. And these guys were just tearing it up. And you kind of knew, I think back then, we weren't sort of talking about it, guys, but you kind of knew that this band couldn't carry on like this. This band, you You weren't looking at a band that was going to be around for 20 years. That's
No, it's like
that's
a
what I
supernova.
thought.
It goes boom, it's bright,
Yeah.
and it dies off.
Yeah,
Yes.
and it kind of
Well-
did in one way, didn't it?
Well,
Yeah.
as we were saying, it evolved. It definitely, there was, but I think there's not a real long, stable period in Guns N' Roses history at all. Probably we're seeing it now.
I think the thing that did it and really cemented it for me was on MTV. There was a show, Live at the Ritz, and that really just cemented to me how important Guns N' Roses was for me. And I remember watching that, and I was in total awe of this band. I watched it live when it came out on MTV. I taped it to video cassette. I missed a couple of the starts of some of the songs because, as it was from pause record, you'd miss that first 2 seconds. Freaking hell, you'd be cursing. But I used to watch it, and the raw energy of the band used to just drive me crazy. And I could imagine what it would have been like being at one of their shows back in that era, back in the club days when they were rocking out, like you guys saw them in '88. Surely there would have been a big difference in a club to see them than basically in an arena. I mean, the arena shows changed a lot as well. But I think what that Live at the Ritz absolutely blew my head off. I used to go out, play pool, drink, go see bands, go do gigs myself. I'd come home to my mate's house and we'd stick on Live at the Ritz and we'd watch it till we fell asleep on the couch. It'd just be something that we did weekly. And that cemented Guns N' Roses for me.
Can I tell you something, bro? That Live at the Ritz, and we can talk about that in some depth if you want, is just incredible. But that Live at the Ritz gig is what we saw in '88. That's what we saw.
I was going to say.
We saw that energy, that power. There's when I look back at that, I'm caught back in time immediately. There's no distinction between those gigs for me. John, have you got any parallels? Is that a parallel for you, those two gigs, or
it's what exactly I was going to say. You basically said exactly what I was going to say. I was trying to quickly find some stuff before we went on, and I was looking for just to confirm for myself. I looked up the set list of the show that I went to, and I can see that what was played there, like the way I remember it, is them just playing, basically some of their, the good portion of the show was obviously Appetite songs. It was the only, it was rare to see a band come out and headline off their debut.
Yep.
Definitely, and that just goes to show how big of a thing that Appetite made, because it was a real sleeper when it was first released. Took a good, half a year to a year for it to really kick off. And then once it did, it just sort of like took over. So, they did that. They did a couple of songs off Lies, a couple of other bits and pieces from here and there. The obviously Knocking on Heaven's Door. And but it was just straight out. I was going to say that they came on while they were at the Sports and Entertainment Centre, which is a big, sort of like good size arena here in Melbourne. They came on and they played it like a club gig.
Yeah,
and there was a completely different way of performance to what they did on their subsequent tour when they came out for Illusion, where it was a big production and there was a whole lot of stuff going on stage.
John, you're probably going to want me to dig it out at some point, but I know I have live in 1988 in Melbourne on VHS, a bootleg.
Sorry, that's in the middle of all my talking. That's exactly what I meant to just say. Well, if you've got it, then you've seen it, because one of the things I went looking when I was looking for the set list was a bootleg that was released. That was a set. It was like 2 CDs of the gig on the 14th, and a DVD of the next night on the 15th.
Oh, wow.
Oh,
Yeah, and I just had a quick look on it. It's on YouTube. Very obviously very grainy and dub of a VHS. But so I'd be interested to see if I watched that. How close to my memory it was. But yeah, I'll save you having to dig out that.
I thought it might be on YouTube. I wasn't sure, but I know I had a decent copy of it somewhere on VHS. It was not too bad, but I used to watch that as well. But it was pretty funny, some of the in-between song rants and stuff like that Axel talked about. Just very cool. But no, the Live at the Ritz is something that we should probably talk about in depth on another show. We should do a whole show on it. I think there's something very cool about that band, that era. That was something phenomenal. I mean, that was so unpolished, but I loved that about the band. They were tight, but it was phenomenal.
So I want to ask you guys a couple of questions. So Brad, you asked me how I got into Guns N' Roses and what appealed to me. Your mum's got a comment here, Brad. I bet you never thought that when you were a boy you would play Slash on stage in a tribute band. So, give us the details of how you got into the band. Was it the album? Was it the videos? And then John, I'll pass that same question over to you because that Sweet Child of Mine video here in New Zealand, guys, was on constant replay. Yeah. Brad.
Well, it's a good one, good question, Mum. But I actually think I did know I was always going to end up playing in a tribute band, playing Slash, because I spent so much time just learning and grinding away in the woodshed. They say, learning all the Slash stuff. I think back in that day, my CD player used to have I guess for lack of better ways of putting it, a start-stop locator, and you could just replay a certain part of a song over and over and over. So you'd start the point and then finish it. So I would learn little bits of a solo and I would just play it over and over and over and just try my hardest to get it as close as possible. Without any video. I mean, there wasn't YouTube and things like that in those days. It was all learning by ear. So as I started to learn little bits and pieces, like you do when you study a guitar player, you start to listen to something else and go, oh, I already know what he's doing there. You start to, it's like when you listen to Van Halen, once you'll start learning a few of those tapping licks and the patterns and stuff like that, you start going, oh, yeah, I know what he's doing there. Where you never really knew back in the day because you're like, gosh, geez, what he's doing is that over the top, yeah. But once you start learning some of the particular licks and stuff that he would play, you would start hearing them throughout, repetition throughout different songs, not in the same way, but you would sort of get a ballpark. Oh, I think I know what he's doing there. And you could almost work it out. Yeah. It's funny now when you watch all the tutorials and stuff like that floating around on YouTube. I wish I had them back in the day, but to get up and play this stuff live is something I really, really miss. We were doing it all the way up until COVID, and I think I did it since the start of year 2001 or 2 or 3. I can't remember. So nearly, 18, 19, maybe even close to 20 years of my life, I was playing an Appetite for Destruction as Slash, and as it sort of, COVID came, the singer moved back to New Zealand, which made it really hard to book gigs and stuff like that afterwards, post that. But, we're talking about what we can do moving forward. So, and just the last couple of days or whatever, I've been mucking around trying to remember what the hell I used to play in those songs and stuff like that. So it's been a bit of fun to sit back and learn some of this Slash stuff again. And you never really forget it once you start learning it, John. It's like
I can imagine. Yeah. One question I've got for you on that though would be then how structured were your set lists and what was the makeup of the set list? Was it? I would imagine it'd be Appetite heavy, and obviously probably anything that wasn't that would be the more well-known songs, the singles and stuff.
Yeah, it depended on the gig. Like we did I think we were one of the first tribute bands to do it. We did a corner show concert at Melbourne here in the corner, and we packed it out. Like we sold it out. They actually opened up the second part of it because they sold so much of it that we played basically Appetite from start to finish without skipping tracks or a different order. We played it in set list order from the album.
Okay.
Yep, from start to finish, and we walked off. So we played Appetite from start to finish, walked off, and then we'd come back and play the Illusion hits and a, you know, maybe one or two off Lies or whatever. But depending on the gig, yeah. But then the other shows we would do, we would play some shorter sets for, you know, some pub gigs, and you weren't playing to predominantly all Guns N' Roses fans. You're playing to just people who love rock music.
Yeah,
so you would try and cater for that too, John. You'd play pretty much all the hits in a set, so to speak. So you'd pretty much play all the hits off the Illusions and Appetite and Lies, and maybe you might throw one little Dark Horse song in there or whatever, one little song in there to keep it interesting for you. Like we used to sometimes throw in, you know, something like, you know, My Michelle or whatever and stuff like that. But people would know that one, but then you would play something like Rocket Queen and people would know that. You think, oh, people are not going to know this, but they know that. Then you play something off Use Your Illusion like Dead Horse or, you know, Coma or something like that. And people would be like, oh, what's this, you know? But it just depended on the gig, John. But we actually did one gig at the SB here in the Gershon room where we did a whole acoustic set in the middle of the show, and we dragged out a couch and we started playing pretty much Lies. And surprisingly enough, we did get one person complain that we played what's it called?
Used to Love It, or
no.
One in a Million.
Oh, the other one, One in a Million. And I just went up to the person on the microphone and just went, you realize that song's actually about a dog. It's not about, you know.
Oh, they got upset with the lyric.
Yeah.
Oh,
sorry.
off.
Used to love her. Sorry. Used to love her, but I had to kill her.
Oh, yeah. Great song.
It's actually about it. But they did, and they complained about One in a Million as well. And I said, well, you know, it's all dark humor. It's not really something that they set out to be intentionally, you know, for whatever reasons, don't want to say it so we get flagged or whatever. But there was a lot of tongue in cheek in music back then as well. You know, a lot of tongue in cheek in music. I mean, you had to listen to songs by like Aerosmith and you could hear the tongue in cheek, like Dude Looks Like a Lady, this, that. Like there was a lot of stuff there that was tongue in cheek because it was easy to write about things like that and offend people, and it got you radio play because you were like front page news. So, but I don't think Guns N' Roses ever intentionally set out to upset people. I think they just did upset people. I don't know why. It was just that attitude. I don't know if you've read.
They upset their management. They upset their record companies. And they loved it.
If you've read Slash's book, you'll hear a lot, and there's a lot in there that it was just a different era. They were rock and roll bands, you know. They were a rock and roll band, and they liked substance abuse. They liked women, and they liked rock music, and they merged it all together. You know, it was
The key in that book, though, Brad, is Slash mentions it many, many times. You know, they didn't think they were going to be around next week. You know, and a lot of great bands and artists, John, over the years. So they were just taking every minute that they could get from being in this band today for what it was worth. So they were, yeah.
I remember a comedian once said, you know, there's people say, oh, you know, I hope I never get to 90. I just, I'd rather be dead. And that's exactly how you feel until you hit 89.
I've had the pleasure of meeting Slash, and I won a contest.
Oh wow!
To meet him, and Yeah, that was very cool. It was very.
Where the
This is when he was doing his Slash Snake Pit record,
Mm.
the first one in '95, and
Yeah.
I met him, won the contest, and part of the contest was you could take along your album merch and get him and Eric Dover to sign it,
Oh,
and there was nothing else that you could take along to get signed, and I sneakily took my Les Paul in at the time, and they said you can't bring that in here. So I've got a gig. I can't leave it anywhere. I've got a gig straight after this. So yeah, I've got to bring it. And I've carried it through. And they were sitting. If you've ever been to a record signing before, they're sitting at a table. They've got a big banner behind them of the album cover, and they're sitting there just signing and getting the odd photo and stuff like that. And I'll walk up there, and the guy I sort of went there with, I just went, oh look, I'm gonna pull out my Les Paul, get him to sign it. And I pulled out my Les Paul, and before he knew it, Eric Dover goes, oh, give me a look at that. The singer from Snake Pit, because he's a guitarist as well. And it's a 70s Les Paul, slightly bigger headstock, if you're familiar with what the Les Pauls in the 70s had. And he goes, oh, it's heavy too. And he's like, oh, this is beautiful. And he's playing it like just not plugged in, just acoustically sort of thing. And it's got lots of ring, and Slash just got his eyes on it, and it's like he was signing something. He was doing this, and he went, pushed it out of the way, grabbed the guitar out of Eric Dover's hands, and he's just playing my guitar, doing all that. And I conveniently sanded the back on the guitar to get the shiny finish off the lacquer, so that if he signed it, I'd get it revarnished over the top. Yep. And I gave it to him. I said, oh, can you sign it, Slash? And a lady behind the thing goes, no signing guitars, no signing guitars. He goes, hey, man, it's cool, you know, and he grabs his Jack Daniels on ice, has a sip, puts his cigarette down because he was smoking. This was the day when you could smoke in pubs and clubs. And he just started drawing skull and crossbones and top hat with a cigarette, and he's writes rock and fucking roll /95, gives it to Brad, gives it back to me, and I was just speechless here. And they go, I'll get a photo with him. So I've got a photo, and they were meant to send it to me because part of your promotional pack, and they never sent me the photo, which I was really spewing about. But I took my own photos of him signing my guitar.
Oh, cool.
And one of them is slightly oversized. I've got it framed and stuff like that, and it's just sitting there. I go, smile, Slash, and he just looks up and goes and smiles with that typical cheeky Slash smile he did. But it made my day, you know what I mean? Yeah, and I'll pull it out.
You display backwards, not forwards, I reckon.
Yeah, well, I did get it varnished as well over the top of it, so it's permanent now, the signature. And I did. You know, I
good idea.
What's that? Sorry.
Good idea.
Yeah, and then I hung out afterwards, and because I had a guitar there, you know, they came and found me. Slash kept buying me, you know, glasses of Jack Daniels with ice, and we just hung out. And I was talking to him about stuff, and it was mind blowing for me. Back in 1995, I was just learning to play guitar. I was learning off all this stuff, you know. It was mind blowing, to sit there and the one thing I will say is this: there was no ego, not 1 ounce of ego. You would have thought he was just like us three, just sitting there. He didn't really want to discuss Guns N' Roses, although he was happy to talk about guitar parts and stuff like that, or guitars and stuff like that, but he never really wanted to sit there and stroke his own ego about Guns N' Roses or anything like that. He was just happy to talk about, and he actually, to be honest with you, predominantly we spoke about the blues. We sat there talking blues music for, I know, at least an hour, and I was like, I can't believe I'm talking to Slash about the blues, and we were talking about Billy Gibbons, Stevie Ray Vaughan. We're talking about all these heroes of, you know, and Jimi Hendrix. He got to jam with Buddy Miles and Billy Cox for a Hendrix tribute that came out around the same time, I think. But he jammed with them with with who was it on vocals? It'll come to me in a minute. But yeah, he spoke about that experience, and he said to me, he couldn't really loosen up while he was playing that stuff. He was playing an SG. He played an SG on it, and he was trying to play a Strat. It just didn't work, so he pulled an SG out, and it worked. And he said he was so tense, and Buddy Miles just goes, "Hey man, just hit the groove, just hit the groove." and Billy just went, "Yeah, man, just follow me, man." You're like, whatever. And he said it just loosened him up enough to get into the vibe. And then they were happy with him doing his Slash styling. So they were, don't try and play like Hendrix, play like Slash, yeah. And and that, that was, he was talking about that stuff. Mind blowing, yeah. To talk to one of your heroes at the time, I'm sitting there learning all of his stuff, and then I got to talk to him about it. And I told him, I'm getting one of your amps. I'm doing this, and I told him what I was doing. And he's like, "You don't need one of my amps. Just get anything. Just get a Marshall." It's just, he's just laid back, didn't care. He spoke a little bit about his 59 Les Paul copy that he had, that he recorded Appetite with, and Snake Pit albums and stuff like that. But at that particular time, he was when he was touring and gigging with Snake Pit, he'd retired that guitar. I think he'd pretty much beat the shit out of it. He said, to the point where it was almost no return. So he wanted to continue to use that guitar for recording, which I think nearly every single album that he's ever done, that guitar gets pulled out for pretty much 90% of all the rhythm guitar tracks. That 59 copy. So it's not an actual real Les Paul. And the funny thing is, he got Gibson to make a copy of a copy.
Yeah.
It's funny, yeah. Because that was the only guitar that really he played. Like his I think it was a sound engineer or someone brought it into him. Couldn't get his guitar at the time to stay in tune or anything like that. And this guy said, "You got to play Les Paul, man, for this stuff." And he played it, and it was just perfect. And that was it.
Yep, 100%.
It
was his manager. It was his manager. The manager at the time. Smart manager realized, that these guys needed something. And again, I like the idea, John, that you mentioned earlier. There was a deliberate move away from what everybody else was doing. And I think you mentioned it too, Brad, as far as super strats and, and stuff like that. There was a deliberate move. I think in that film, there's a film where they interview Slash. I think they're talking about Hendrix, aren't they? And Slash says himself that he tried to work a Strat with a Marshall, and he tried a few times, and it pissed him off that he couldn't do it, but it didn't work. The only thing that worked for him was what you've got behind you, bro. The humbuckers, the Les Paul.
Yeah, and that's his thing. I mean, he does play other guitars as well. We know that, especially from listening to his blues record that came out last year and things like that. But it's pretty cool to think a guy back in that time, he just left Guns N' Roses. He just had enough. He'd left, and you would think that his ego would be too big to hang out and talk to a little old basic guy like me. And he was just so basic, and I met him on just very quickly on the Velvet Revolver tour they did here in Melbourne, and he remembered me.
Wow.
He remembered. So I was like, he didn't remember my name. He goes, "Oh yeah, you're the dude from the signing with the 70s Les Paul." So he remembered the guitar, not my name.
Wow.
Yeah, everybody remembers the guitars.
But
hey, Tony.
Yeah, very cool, very cool. And it's just one of those. Everyone that talks about Slash, if they get to know him, they always say he's just a humble, easygoing bloke. And I have to say that was my experience with him. He was, different story with Axl. I've met Axl. He was very different. Yeah.
Well, I think the easygoing humbleness that you talk about is reflected in the biography, and we're going to always mention if you want a great biography to read Slash's biography. It's It's grim, it's brutal, and it's honest. And he pulls no punches. But one of the great things that I like about that book is that he doesn't ditch Axl. He talks about him a little bit, but he walked away, didn't he? He had to walk away from Guns N' Roses because he knew if he stayed, it would have had an effect. So again, I think that shows a bit of humbleness from his part, John, because a lot of guys would have stayed and saw the whole thing blow up and implode maybe. But he thought, well, okay, you want an Axl? You got it, bro. I'll go.
Yeah, I think he just saw that it was inevitable that it was just going to be unworkable, and there was a crazy period between those two, and who knows what happened for them to get back together after, it was quite an acrimonious split at the time.
Oh,
yeah,
I think
cancer at one point, and sort of was wishing all sorts of horrible things to him, but it was one of two things. Either they both grew up a bit and decided that it wasn't worth it, or they've just decided that that was going to be the most successful path forward, and decided to put up with it. But I hope it's the
little bit of both, maybe, John. I think time heals a lot of wounds, and in a lot of therapy sessions that these guys probably do, especially Axl, because I know he had a lot of mental health issues, the poor guy, and he would he would probably be getting told, you need to let go of that stuff, and you can't take this stuff to the grave, because no matter how much someone pisses you off or upsets you or hurts you, you've got to be kind, and you've got to forgive them and be godly in that sense, and forgive and move forward, which is maybe what they all did. Is like, well, I know Steven Tyler, I might have even said something to Axl saying, what are you doing? What are you doing? He
was an odd fellow for a long time, bro. He was an odd fellow.
He still is to an extent, but he's had quite a abusive upbringing, and his childhood wasn't very nice, and he was abused, sexually abused, and all sorts of stuff by his step parents and this and that. Look, I don't know the full story, and I guess no one will ever really know because he was the one who went through it. But those sort of things can be traumatic for people, and they never really fully recover. But at least at this point, he seems to have gotten through it, which is a good thing. And for them to be back together, look, it's heartbreaking for me to see just Duff, Slash, and Axl, and it's not easy up there with either Matt Sorum or Steven Adler. I'm friends, well, not like talking like us mates every week, friends with Steven Adler. But I know Steven Adler. I did security for Steven Adler when he came to Australia. I offered to play guitar in his band for it, which nearly pulled off, which would have been very cool. But yeah, he was lovely, and he laughs a little bit, about the whole Guns N' Roses thing, what actually happened now and stuff like that. He laughs about it. He laughs. I showed him my Guns N' Roses tribute band stuff, and my drummer sometimes goes the whole Steven Adler look, and then other times he goes the Matt Sorum look, depending on what sort of, at what gig we're doing, this and that, blah, blah. And he saw some footage of us and photos of us as our drummer, as Matt Sorum, and he goes, oh, what's he doing? It was pulling the piss out of my drummer. Like, my drummer was there too. Well, he's laughing at him. And it was funny. But he's got, look, it's disappointing and very sad that they got left out of it. But I guess we'll never really know why they didn't. A big part of it might be the split, the financial split. I think I don't think Izzy was too keen. Yeah, I don't think Izzy was too keen on the. He's like, you got to be kidding me, yeah. Like, and then Izzy was such an important and integral part of the band, especially with the songwriting guys. Songs like Mr. Brownstone and this and that. Like, I mean, a lot of it has to do with Izzy. It's you know, he was such an important part to the band, and when he left, I think that may have affected the whole band, because I think it's hard to recover. That would be like Keith Richards leaving the Rolling Stones. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's how I saw it. When he left, it became difficult for them to. I know Gilby was an amazing replacement. I thought he did really well in the 90s and throughout that period. But you'll never really lose that magic, or never be able to recreate the magic that was the original lineup of Guns N' Roses, really. But I'm glad they're still doing stuff, and I'm not, I'm not like the whole Van Halen thing of like, if it's not the original lineup, I don't want to listen to it. I still listen to Guns N' Roses, whatever era. I appreciate it for what it is, and I'm glad they're still able to get out there and make music. But Andrew, we discussed this on the blues record ranking that we did, that Slash did, and I think Slash is a very smart businessman as well. He's got his solo career with the Conspirators, Miles Kennedy and the Conspirators, and he's a workaholic, because I think that's his way to not fall back onto substance abuse. And the blues record was a new step for him. I think that might be the direction you see Slash moving as he gets into his senior years, because you can do blues
good
all the way
call.
through, you can't do.
And
couldn't
blues
imagine-
was always his passion.
I couldn't imagine Axl Rose singing "Sweet Child of Mine" in his 90s. You know what I mean? I don't think it's possible unless he sings it
Can't
down.
imagine Mick Jagger singing "Satisfaction" in his 40s, could you?
No.
Well, that
Until it
being
happens.
said, I mean, what I'm getting at is there gets a point for a singer where they have to sort of look at what they're doing, because they can't possibly do what they did when they were 19, 20.
Yeah.
It's your body's not up to it, but a guitar player can continue to play, and a musician continue to play. They can continue to sing, but it's very hard for a singer to go back and sing what they were doing in 1987.
Yeah, of course.
That's a good point, because you look
you
at John Bon Jovi. He had to retire. Steven Tyler, can't sing because a lot of the songs that they're singing, guys, are a little bit different and a little bit more high arranged than say Satisfaction, John. As an example.
Oh,
So
definitely, yeah.
Mick's been rapping for a long, long time. But I think that's a good point about where Slash is going. He's in a new relationship too, so that's always going to get the fires burning, as well. So it'll be interesting to see what he comes out with moving forward. I certainly look forward to hearing what they have to do. But wouldn't it be good though, guys, if Izzy came back? I'd love to see Izzy back, but he ain't coming back, is he?
I don't think so. I mean, it's very sad to think that, while he's still able to do it, that he could come back. But I'm not sure, John, whether you sort of read the same sort of things that I read or whatever. But I think Izzy didn't come back because of financial reasons. I don't think that they were.
He didn't really go into too much detail, but he just basically, I think it was either just a soundbite or a tweet or something like that, where he just said Axl didn't want to share the spoils. And the other thing too is you got to think of it in terms of, well, you left the band, I kept it going. Should it still be an even split? And that's a different argument. But yeah, like a lot of times, sometimes people come back and they want the original people to come back in the original way. And man, he's been a long time away from that band, and he's evolved in his direction. And
30 years.
And look, Izzy's solo output is not very Guns N' Roses like. You can see where it dovetails in, but definitely he's got a more sort of like rocky vibe about him. And to him, does he really want to go up there and do Paradise City?
Yeah. Good
You know?
point. Good point. But I think Izzy's direction was always going to be more what he was doing. The Juju Hounds record was a big eye opener because he was still on that album. He's still rocking out, but it was a lot more Stonesy. It was a lot more Rolling Stones than Guns N' Roses, if that makes sense. I could have imagined that would have been a expensive Winos record more than a Guns N' Roses record, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
You know, but yeah. Look, who knows? You never know. I know Steven Adler's got up once or twice with Guns N' Roses at their shows, and he's like, "Why get me up for one or two songs when I know the whole album?" You know, I know that it burns him. I know that for a reason because he's told me. He goes, it breaks my heart, and you can imagine what that would do when he's out doing Adler's Appetite and he's playing the whole record, and he wants to get up and play with his old mates, and he's been denied that. He goes, sitting side of stage watching someone play the songs I recorded. He goes, it's very hard to do.
Yeah.
So, but hey,
the curse of Pete Best.
Yeah. If rock and roll was fair, we wouldn't have lost a lot of people that we've lost. A lot of bands wouldn't have broken up. You know, I will say this: we're just talking about Steven Tyler. I don't want to deviate too much on off Guns N' Roses, but I saw some footage this week which gave me goosebumps, and I got a bit emotional watching it. Was Steven Tyler singing with Paul McCartney doing Helter Skelter? It was incredible. So yeah, after the show, go and have a watch of it if you can find it on YouTube. It was amazing. I thought Steven Tyler sang amazingly well, and hopefully that's a you know, maybe he's not up to touring and stuff like that, but at least he's out singing a little bit, and he comes out and he owns it. You know, Steven Tyler, what he's like as a frontman, he comes out, he's the ultimate frontman, you know, and it's phenomenal. So yeah, go and watch that. But
We'll check it out.
Yeah, without the
all right, guys.
Yeah.
I appreciate the fact that you guys have got together, taken an hour out of your busy schedules. Brad, you've got something to show us before you go too, a little bit closer to
yeah, I'll show you guys. And then John, I don't know, we totally forgot to talk about your weekend that was I don't know if you want to debrief, give a really quick debrief on that, John, for us first.
Oh, well, it's not really anything to do with what we're talking about. I did go to the Melbourne Guitar Show yesterday, and it's just funny. I was just thinking when you were talking about Slash not quite remembering you, but remembering your guitar. I met up with Shane from In the Blues, and so what the Melbourne Guitar Show did this year was a bit smaller than the one they had 2 years ago, which was kind of disappointing. And I'd planned to go again today, but I'd seen everything twice yesterday. You know, it was I got through everything, and I thought, I'm not going to drive all that way and just see the same stuff. So something's alive in there. So what they had, that like the main room with all the booths of people displaying their wares, and Fender had a separate. Because you have to actually walk out the front door of the main building and go into a separate area for the Fender exhibit. So I've gone all around the main room, and being a left-hander myself, I was interested in seeing all the left-handed guitars, and there was really a massive minority of them. At first run, I could only find one. And there was a couple others hidden here and there in corners. But Fender had a few. So I went in and had a look, and then I met up with Shane, and he said, we'll go and have a look at that Fender thing. And I was saying to him, there's a custom shop Strat with a maple neck. There's another 3-color Sunburst Strat with a rosewood board. Then they've got an American vintage one. They've got an American, and I'm rattling off all these. He goes, geez, you got a photographic memory. I said, yeah, but it's only for shit like this. Anything that's like useful to my life or it's going to make me money just goes in one ear and out the other. But so the Melbourne Guitar Show was a bunch of sort of like different music stores, manufacturers, different people making gear for guitarists, be it guitars, amplifiers, and all the other stuff that goes in between. and it was a fun day. It was a long day. Like I said, met up with Shane, met up with a couple of friends of mine that know personally, that we hung around a bit for a while. Saw Dr. Rick there playing some stuff at one of the booths that he's affiliated with. And yeah, it's sort of a couple of other people that I'd sort of like know from the scene here and there. And it was a fun day, but you know, sort of slightly disappointing where number one, we didn't have our mate Hoss doing a performance, which he's done in the past few. So it was a shame to go to the guitar show and not catch some of his absolute brilliance. And yeah, also yeah, just there seemed to be a sort of like a few things missing there. Fender really had partnered with one of the local stores and was you know, had their setup all sort of from their stock. You know, there was no there was a Marshall booth that was very, very small. There was no actual Gibson booth. They were present, Gibson and Epiphone were present as part of another store, rather large chain's you know, display. It was a good sized display and very nice, but that was like a bit of everything. And yeah, so ultimately I sort of hung around more at the end for the hang, but really I'd managed to see everything there was to see within the first half of the day.
Yeah.
And but you know, it's guitars, you'll stare at them all day. Who gives a shit?
Yeah. Look, guitar is life, John. So you know what I mean.
Yeah.
It's good that you got along there. I was very busy for a number of reasons, but yeah, I'm glad that you went and presented, because I think those sort of things need to be supported as well, just as much as live shows. But you know, I think they probably struggled for the last couple of years post the pandemic.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So hopefully the next one will be bigger.
Yeah, and if you don't support them, they are going to shrink. Like they changed venue. From what I was talking to one of the suppliers there when I was looking over his booth, he was saying that it was more expensive to get a booth. And you'd expect over 2 years later it'd go up a little bit, but he said it was like a better venue, but it was all in one room, but of course it was smaller. And the previous location had it sort of like split up on different levels, and then they had different sort of like rooms further away for performances and workshops. All in all, I'd like to see it grow a bit, and that's only going to happen if the people patronise it.
That's right.
So yeah, hopefully it'll kick on next time they do it. I believe they do it every 2 years. And we'll see what happens. But yeah, so that was my day yesterday, and then I got to go see a tribute band that I used to go see back in the day in the early 90s. And the great thing about it was yesterday was the first gig that their old bass player came back, and he's been a friend of mine for years, and I haven't caught up with him for so long. So I walked into the venue, and he was just walking off stage to go get something, spotted me, and then just came over, and it was great to spend time with him and see him again and play all those great Mellencamp songs, very heavy on the Scarecrow album and the Lonesome Jubilee and all the singles off and then a couple of other well-known tracks. But yeah, they were great. They were tight as, real professional outfit, sounded great. Yeah, so it was all in all a great day. And then I sort of at the end of the day, I thought to myself, nah, definitely not going to go back to the guitar show today. I'm going to try and recuperate.
Yeah, fair enough, mate. You're on your feet all day.
Walk around for 12 hours, you feel it.
I remember the last one I went to, John. I literally walked out of there. I felt like I was going crazy because everywhere I turned, there was noise. There was 100 million guitar players in there testing out gear. It was like Widdly Diddly Central. So everywhere, like it was just almost too much for me. I went, you know what? I'll come next year or next one to watch the performances and that, and I'll walk through these, say hello to the people I know, but I'm not like I don't know, it's all too much. Sometimes that gets a bit noisy, and I know that that year in particular, the Caulfield Racecourse, the last one I went to, there was a lot of people complaining about the noise. It was just too much in the Gear Expo area. It was just too much noise.
One good thing. Oh, sorry.
No, you're right. You're right.
I was just going to say one good thing that they did this year was like from the top of the hour to 45 minutes past was whatever, and then they'd announce, ladies and gentlemen, in 2 minutes we start our 15 minutes of a quiet time, so there's no amplification allowed from whatever 45 up until 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock. So it gave you a bit of a thing. You know, it's like when the air conditioning turns off and you thought it was quiet before, but now you realize what quiet is.
Yeah. Look, yeah. So that was something that I noticed and took away from the last one I went to. And I've been to all of them, and this is the first year I haven't been. But anyway,
I hate to say it, there wasn't anything there that, like, I would say is groundbreaking that you wouldn't have already known about or seen or whatever like that. Yeah, it's fun to look at pedals and things like that. One interesting thing I spoke to was a guy from one of the shops down right on the other side of town. They're resurrecting Golden Tone amps, which were manufactured in Melbourne back in the 50s and 60s. And they've been working on prototypes and stuff like that. So that was very interesting to talk to him. Look, it's always going to be a fun day out. I just felt it didn't have as much as what it had last time I went. And I'm hoping it'll kick on again next year or the year after, whenever they do the next one.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Brilliant.
I'm sure it will. Well,
so,
the reason that I didn't go on Saturday is because I was tied up in a tattoo shop.
What were you doing, brother?
I
getting colored in.
I had a milestone birthday a couple of weeks ago, and I went and got touched up. And yesterday was my final session, so I thought, Andrew wants me to reveal it and show it. So I don't know if you guys can see, but the light's a bit shiny here.
That's disappointing, mate. When you told me you got touched up, I imagined it was something else. But never mind, that's nice too.
Yeah, getting touched up is always good, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't know if you can see on the camera there, but
do you have to wax your armpit to get tattooed?
No, it's hair there. Yeah,
cheeky bastard.
yeah. Thanks, John.
Well
done,
John.
My fault. You invited me to the show.
If you go and
you knew what you're getting.
If you go and check Brad out on Instagram, you'll see some clips there that Brad has put up on his Instagram. Brad Cook Music. Go and follow him there, and have a look. Yeah. But always interesting, bro, to see what's happening. It's one of the great things about Instagram, because if you want to see what Brad's doing and John's doing, John's put some stuff up on his Instagram too. So there he is there, John ZD. ZD351 Music. I saw your post, your early post that you did with Dr. Rick.
Yep.
Incredible guitar player.
Mate, I told him, I said, look, mate, I'm sure you do good work, but I'm sort of disappointed all that medicine stuff got in the way. But no, he is a fantastic guitar player. And a nice bloke. I didn't even notice him. I was walking past and he reached out and grabbed me on the shoulder and he goes, hey, how you going? And he's always a beautiful human, and we had a really good chat. Sat and watched him play for a little bit, and then came back later in the day, and he was going off again. And then he was having a bit of a chat with another guy, talking, heavy gear talk and stuff like that. And we were getting right into it. It was funny that I was looking. They had that new Rockman, the MXR X100 pedal that sort of clones the old Tom Scholz Rockman. So I dug out on my phone and showed him a video of the original X100 that I've got, that I resurrected and hadn't worked for years. I don't know what I did, fiddled with it, not really doing anything to it, but just, it's like slapping the back of the old fashioned TV and got a sound out of it and recorded a few bits and pieces just to get the sound at it. And he's going, "Oh, that's fantastic," and so we had a really good time. Yeah, Rick's fantastic. Like I said, Shane, actually, I just saw Shane just sent me a message. I saw it pop up on my phone saying, "Oh, sorry, we didn't get to say goodbye. We hung around for a bit, but then I didn't want to bust his ass because I was there for fun. He was working."
Sure.
But actually, you'll see me on his channel probably. We
Good.
recorded some stuff at one of the booths.
Brilliant.
And yeah, so man, it's like one of the things that I was disappointed. One of the guys that I saw there that was actually had a booth the previous one, but didn't. He was there as a Michael from Shred Studios, Shred Guitars. He's a guitar tech. He's a great guitar player. He plays in a couple of tribute bands. He does the Van Halen thing. He also does a Fleetwood Mac thing. Sort of not. Oh well, funny thing. I saw a video that they did, and they it was like a bit of a promo thing, and they had the names of everyone and the part they play. And there's the other guitarist that plays Lindsey Buckingham. Not that they sort of play them, but then they sort of like put in brackets to say, who this person covers in the band. And they
Brilliant.
had Michael down as Peter Green. But yeah, Michael he's a gun guitarist and a really good tech as well. Actually, our mate Joe Copinti put me onto him. I run into Joe at the previous guitar show, and I was asking him a question. I'm thinking about doing this or that, and he goes, "Oh, come see this bloke," and he put me onto something else. But yeah, my slack ass. 2 years later, I've still got to get my my guitar back to Michael to get fixed. Actually, I the other day I was drilling out a piece of mirrored perspex to make my own scratch plate for this guitar that I want to make it look like my other one. I've got a strap that's black with a mirror on the front, and so very much in the style of who stole it off me, I think, Steve Vai. With the mirror on the front. I did that
Steve
first
Vai.
back in. Although really, Phil Lynott from Thin Lizzy did that with his bass before I did it, but. Sometimes you just think of the same thing and don't even realize you're copying someone.
That is true.
Didn't the guitarist that passed away, didn't he do the same thing? Didn't he have a mirror on his Les
John
Paul?
Sykes, he had a little mirror
John Sykes?
on the, but his was a Les Paul, so obviously it's much smaller scratch. But
Yeah.
I don't think I've got it out.
Yeah, he had a mirror on his Les Paul there, and Lynott told him to do that, didn't he?
Yeah.
He might have, because I sort of didn't make the connection. It's the both of them had the same thing.
It's really cool how John just disappears into a sea of guitars there behind him.
Sorry, guys, it's freaking dark in here, isn't it?
That's all good. It's all good.
Is that better?
Much better.
That's better.
I'll pull this out.
It's just still got a sea of guitars behind you in the dark. It's amazing. Yeah.
Oh, lovely.
So this is the look that I'm trying to go for.
Yeah.
The mirror on the front. So obviously it's going to cop all the glare and all the reflection of what's on the computer monitors. But I made that back in 1990. This thing used to have a black scratch plate and 3 single coils, and I went to town on it.
Wow.
And so pretty soon I've got to get Michael my old Squire contemporary Strat and get that fixed up to kind of look like that.
Beautiful. That's
Fantastic,
what you want.
bro. All right,
For
guys,
sure.
we're going to be back next week, aren't we? We're going to be, if you weren't aware of it, I don't think we officially announced it, but we're going to come back and we're going to rank the tracks on GNR Lies. Great album. As John mentioned, it's an important album because it has elements appetite and post appetite. So very, 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 very clever piece of marketing and a release by their management and record company to do that. Very smart.
Yeah. So anyone comes back, we'll see us next week. Actually talk about Lies on the show. Not so much like what we did today, where we waffled on. At least we did talk about Guns N' Roses for the majority of it. So we're getting there.
Oh, we look forward to it. We'll have some picks too. John sent through. Give me a second. So there's John's ticket, and that's the set list.
Yeah, that's my actual ticket for that gig. Back in the
Wow.
day, I used to save my tickets and put them into the old-fashioned. You can see the diagonal ridges there of glue, the old-fashioned photo albums with the bit of plastic sheet over the front.
Yeah.
Unreal.
So you could do a show on that. If you ever get stuck for a thing, I can take out my photo albums. I went to this gig, and then I went to that gig, and then I went to this gig.
Oh, well, yeah. There's always an option. So yeah, fantastic for that. But we'll look forward to catching up with everybody next week for that. Brad, have you got the chat up? We've had a few people here in the chat saying hi and hanging out with us. We haven't had a lot of people on. But we want to appreciate the ones that have hung out with us live, and we also want to shout out to anybody who watches us after the show. Please subscribe to us. We subscribe back to you as well. So I did that yesterday. I subscribed to half a dozen channels. Just one little thing, guys, I want to share with you before you shoot off and say goodbye to everybody, Brad. I think I shared it with you guys in our little chat that we've got. Facebook are after the channel because we stream our show on the 5150 show. So they're after our channel because, quote unquote, we break copyright, which is really, really interesting because nothing we do on the show has copyright. So just to remind you that if you are streaming your shows elsewhere on other platforms, they'll come after you because they don't like that either. They don't like that. That's the only reason why I can think. So we're streaming. Pardon?
What particular copyright are they claiming that you're infringing?
Oh, well, I've appealed it, so I'll when it comes back, I'll share it in our chat, bro. But all they said was breach of copyright.
Maybe they think that your Facebook group is just pinching something off some guy's YouTube channel, not realizing it's your YouTube channel.
Oh, I've done a little bit of research. They don't like you sharing. They don't like people sharing YouTube channels, shows live, and that's their way of.
My understanding, Meta is not a fan of YouTube because YouTube's a search engine, and it's different to Meta's search engine, Google. Yeah. So
So we're streaming this show on another Facebook group. So we're going to do a bit of an experiment, John, and see how long we can stream on this one before we get a copyright one. Just a little interesting thing. But anyway, I'll keep you guys in the loop with what's happening there. Want to do a shout out, Brad?
Yeah, we'll certainly do that. So I've got Nelson. Nelson joined us in the chat. Thank you very much. Helene O'Hara, thank you for joining us. Ellen, my mother, Ellen, and all our prayers to the family, everything that's going on there. We had Guitar Talk Universe join us. We had, scrolling down, Steve Anderson, the wonderful Steve Anderson, join us again. We had Tony Bowen. Tony, thank you for joining us again. And he's just mentioned here, hey, lads, finally got to see the Zeppelin movie yesterday, and it was fantastic. Beautiful. I'm glad you got to see it. That's all that's mentioned. Anything in the chat, Andrew? Sure, there's a few lurkers floating around, but if not, and you're watching this on a replay, feel free to give your comments in the comments section there on the video. And thank you for joining us. And if you haven't already, as I always say, subscribe.
Awesome, bro. If you can do that. So there's a couple of things I'd like John to do when he can. If you can attach Shane's link to one of the comments later on, Shane from In the Blues, because you mentioned his channel. So if you can attach that somewhere on the show, because, you know, he's a giant. You know, he's been doing, you know, I watch his shows as much as I can. I can't watch them live because he streams his shows in conjunction for the North American market, which is when I'm at work. So, but that's understandable. You know why he's doing that.
Live streams are all over the place. So sometimes you'll do them early, sometimes you'll do them late like that. So just a matter of catching him. I think the last one he did, he didn't even give anyone pre-warning. So it's just as you go with him. But look, definitely Shane's channel is a great channel. I highly recommend it to anyone who hasn't caught up with it. while we were wandering around the show together, there's at least 3 or 4 people just come up and said to me, "Well, love your show, love your channel." You know, and the whole thing about his channel is that it's straightforward. There's no BS about it. People can trust what he says when he tells you about, you know, what he finds and stuff like that. He's a cool guy. I've you know, sort of been involved in you know, being a viewer and a mod for him for a long time, and yeah, definitely one of the best gear channels out there.
And
Awesome.
if you can, bro, if you can keep us up to date when he plays the show with you in it, and what we'll do is when we're going live, we'll go and we'll play that snip for people here. Just make it a little bit easier for people here to see that. So if you can keep us in the loop with that, that'll be cool, because it's all about sharing on this channel, guys, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's
Hey,
it.
Andy.
And yeah, Andy Carson, the last one in the chat there, Andrew. So thank you for joining us.
I can't wait, guys, to hang out and rank lies.
Yeah, it's going to be one in a million.
Oh, but yeah. Especially those acoustic songs. That is just gold.
Well, for me, and I'll keep it. I won't say too much, but for me,
Yeah.
Lies is all about the acoustic. That's you know.
Gold.
Yeah.
Caught. What do they call it, John? Lightning in a bottle.
Pretty much. It was the thing of its time.
Yeah.
That's it.
All right.
Anyway, guys,
We're out of here, guys.
Guns N' Roses.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Okay. Oh, where are we? Okay.
See you, chat fam. See you, viewers.
See you,
See you,
fam.
fellas.